another virtual WonderCon. This is all about Geiger, which is one of the most exciting new launches coming up from Image Comics in the spring. And I have the creative team from Geiger, Gary Frank and Geoff Johns, and I will let you guys introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Gary Frank, and I'm the artist on a new book called Geiger.
Hey, I'm Geoff Johns, and I'm the writer of Image's new title, Geiger, out April.
So, can you tell us a little bit about the big picture of Geiger? What's the pitch?
It's about a family man who loves nothing more than his family, and during this nuclear attack, his family's in a fallout shelter, and he is altered, and he's left outside it, and he becomes their protector. So for years, he's protecting his family from scavengers who want to get inside this fallout shelter until he can find a way to open it and be with his family again. It's influenced by some of our greatest favorite films of, I think, the sci-fi era, the early sci-fi era, the 70s and 80s, like Mad Max and The Warriors. We call it an atomic Western. It's really influenced by Westerns. It takes place in Nevada, and it's it's really rooted in this one character, Geiger.
Yeah, who's kind of to go back to the Western theme. True Grit was one of the films that we were talking about at the early stages, and so he's kind of analogous to Rooster Cogburn in a way, in a relationship which he forms later with some characters which are introduced during the story. With the characters, he has two forms. There's the form of the guy who's the father who protects his family, who we see in the early part of the book before whatever happens to him. And then there's also kind of another form, which is something which is where we kind of move into the fantastical element. And for that, he's kind of a horror character. He's kind of a monster. I think it was important, even though we're talking about Westerns, to not kind of lean too hard into Western themes. So we've kind of gone in a different direction with that. But the idea behind the appearance of the character is there's an element of the monster to him. There's humanity underneath, which we kind of see and we learn. But visually, he's a monster most of the time.
Well, he's got these boron rods that go inside him to kind of temper his radioactive energy buildup, and when he takes those out, he starts to glow. He starts to charge up. And Brad Anderson colors. I mean, Gary's designs are amazing, but Brad Anderson's colors over to add that glow, that light. We wanted something that was interactive and different, and like Gary said, monstrous. Like we've always been big fans of characters like the Thing and Hulk, and doing something that was more of a curse than a blessing to him.
How much do you think your history with superhero comics and those characters have influenced this and bleed into it?
Well, the world building for us, I think, certainly has, because we've built this whole world of, of this event called the Unknown War happened, and then this was years later, what the world looks like, at least a piece of the world, in Nevada outside Las Vegas. And so a lot of the world building Gary and I have done, in whether it's reintroducing Shazam and expanding that mythology, or Doomsday Clock, or even Batman Earth One, it's kind of taking things and rethinking them. So, with this, it took everything that we've talked about over the years, about the world, about life, things we love in fiction, nonfiction, and exploring it in a different, unique, but very colorful way. We wanted this place to be strange and wonderful and bizarre, and you meet all these insane, crazy folks that have power in this post-nuclear war world, and what that looks like, and how that power is expressed, and how people express themselves is all very, very different and bombastic. And I think, that's all informed in a way by our superhero work, but we wanted to do something that it's sci-fi and genre, but not straight up superheroes.
And I think also, I mean, there'll be some things which I think when people first see them, they'll wonder what kind of book they're reading, because there are elements which don't necessarily seem like they should gel together. I think it was important to not do. I mean, we've all seen Mad Max, and we've all seen a million other representations of kind of, you know, of a post-apocalyptic world, and so the idea with this is to kind of have some elements which people probably haven't seen before and which are not necessarily what you would expect.
Say this just to embarrass Gary, but you know, I've worked with for so many years now, but and we talk about every single story we've ever worked on. We talk consistently about it. We are always, you know, talking about the characters and the thematics and the world and everything else. And his artwork though is so emotional. Like on top of being so detailed, the storytelling's, you know, unbelievable. Um, the line work's amazing, but this just the emotion that Gary that you bring in. Like I always say this to you, like there's never a canned emotion. There's never. It's all original. It's all that from that moment you live in it, and I think that's why his work has resonated so much for so many. Certainly for me and what we work on is that emotion there is real. And this guy Geiger, who's fought to protect his family no matter what, and is cursed with this radioactive affliction that has both given him abilities, but also forced him to stay away from people. It's you see the pain on his face, and you see the struggle, and you see the fortitude, and everything that in these pages, and the coolness of the design. It's badass. But and his two-headed dog, but who we love. But the artwork, Gary, that you've done on this, it's the best of your career, I think.
Jeff's talking about emotion and things like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think our philosophy in general with this is that you need to feel some kind of a connection with the characters. It's all very well having a cool costume or a cool superpower, but you kind of need to feel the humanity behind the characters. And this is the stuff which I really enjoy trying to kind of squeeze out of a character. And I know it's the kind of thing which Geoff enjoys writing. So I think this is probably why we why we click so well creatively. We have that where we're both enjoying the same element.
Oh yeah.
Of the process. Let me find
as much as we're in this like radioactive world with these colorful characters from Vegas that are fighting for power, and Geiger's fighting to protect his family in this big bombastic nuclear wasteland. It's all about the heart of that character. We always talk about whether we're working on Bruce Wayne and the Earth One books or whoever, but it's about the emotional core of that character and how that's expressed visually in this fun way. And this guy's rage and pain and everything manifests in this radioactive power that he builds up. And we have this bit where people theorize, was it the bombs that went off and the radioactivity and the fallout that he was stuck in outside, or was it the drive and the love and the determination to protect his family that saved him, that made him into this? It's kind of a blur of both, which we love playing with.
The refusal to die, the refusal to succumb, even in the face of a nuclear bomb. This guy is he just refuses to be atomized.
I think it's worth noting too that when you show the picture of the close-up of his face, the tension and the struggle in that character is just as striking as when he's a glowing skull. Like the human side of him is just as compelling visually.
Well, I think the monster aspect is fun. It's kind of the, you know, yeah, here he goes now he's going to kick some ass, and that's fun, and that's the catharsis, I guess, that we get. But before we get there, I think it's important that people feel the man underneath.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's nice to have those moments. There are kind of banal moments as well, which we've added in later to just kind of to just show how his time has passed so slowly, to kind of the idea that the weight of all of these years hanging on him, just doing the same thing. The only thing which is important to him is protecting his family, and so everything else, his life just becomes kind of you know, a routine. He's just keeping himself alive just to perform this task, and you know, year upon year upon year, day after day, he's just doing this thing, and there's a huge weight on his shoulders, and a huge I don't know. Yeah, probably there's not a better way to express it.
It's his purpose, right, Gary? That's his only purpose, is there to protect his family. and then things come into his life to challenge that purpose, you know. So suddenly there's complications to it, and other people that need his help, and people that want certain things from him. And so this, you know, this kind of monk-like, you know, violent mission of his is just to protect his family from any scavengers, any intruders, anyone that might threaten this shelter. It just becomes more complicated. And you know, we don't want to spoil the story because we think it's a fun journey to go down. But it harkens it back again to the early Image days when I read Spawn and Savage Dragon, and there were really these personal stories. Like Spawn he had a very intriguing personal story about his wife and losing her, and Savage Dragon didn't have a memory and had no real purpose and was finding one. You hooked into those characters early on because of the emotional stories. The visuals are beautiful, the art's amazing, but we wanted to get back to that core character, like having a character. We said when we started this, like, you know, we want a statue of our character on our desk, and like, what's that look like? And maybe this one has a little light inside because he glows.
Since the genesis of this story came about, we have basically been living through kind of a low-grade apocalypse for a year now. Has that affected the tone or the direction of the story at all? Just kind of actually living through being stuck in a shelter for months at a time, or?
It's odd. We early on in our conversations, I was kind of slightly concerned because there are things about Geiger, the fact that he's a guy with a fallout shelter and everything, and I said to Geoff, you know, what are we saying about this guy? Because we wanted him to be an everyman. We didn't want him to be kind of some paranoid guy who, you know, what do they, preppers, do they call them? We didn't want him to be something like that. And I was kind of, in the beginning, I was saying, you know, what are we saying when we say this guy's got that? And then in the meantime, with the pandemic, all of these things just seem so much more normal and kind of understandable. The idea that at some point in the future, with all of the uncertainty, not just the pandemic, but the situation politically, the idea that this stuff, which seems so kind of far-fetched in the beginning, it doesn't feel quite so far-fetched anymore. It feels like maybe it's not quite such a strange response to events for people to kind of to begin to panic and begin to dig holes in the ground.
Yeah, for sure. It felt, you know, in Geiger, in this area of Nevada, it's so radioactive, you can't go outside without a suit, except for Tariq Geiger. He can walk around because of this condition, this affliction, this radioactive power or burden that he carries with him enables him to like survive in these toxic environments. And so having people who couldn't go outside unless they were in a suit, it was weird to work on that and then be in this pandemic. Some things, you know, evolved and changed, and we talked about it, and some things we've always had since the beginning, but it was a strange experience to be working on this, and then during the pandemic this happens.
I have to say, as a reader, the first time I read it, things were kind of shut down or whatever. And the second time I really sat down and dug through it was during the wildfires, when the sky was just completely orange. And I looked outside and I had my kid in the other room, and I thought, it gives it a whole other level when you're actually like on the precipice here and you can't leave the house. And you really, it gets to the heart of what's driving the character, I think. And it's resonant more than it might have been planned on being, I think.
I think also Gary and I talk a lot about this, but you know, it also gets to like, you know, who's close to you that you care about and protecting and helping, and you know, and with Geiger and his wife and children, like that's all he care in this grand scheme of life. That's all that becomes important to him, and that character again resonated for us, and even more so during the pandemic. And also that frustration I think everyone has, that you know, they want to go out, they want to get active, they want to fix things, and this is kind of, it's not a problem that is easily fixed or overcome. It's complicated, and that's what Geiger's dealing with on his level. Very different kind of, you know, comic book, graphic novel colorful, bombastic sci-fi problem of a nuclear wasteland with, you know, mutant insects and casino gang bosses and things like that. Um, but it all influences everything that goes on, influences what we do. Gary and I talk about it all the time. It's strangely uncanny sometimes when we're working on projects and thematics or things that we started, we see kind of bubble up in the world.
Yeah, I remember when we were doing Doomsday Clock, and there was a panel earlier on where Geoff had a scene where the president was unavailable for comment, and we just had a shot on a TV of a golf bag laying on a golf course, and that was like 2-3 weeks before the whole thing came out with Trump with him with the golf, the fact that he was continually playing golf rather than doing presidential stuff. And it became a huge thing, and it was all over the news, and we were just laughing because we just basically made that as a gag in the comic.
Yeah, it's kind of like Harold and his purple crayon. You know, we drew it and it came true.
Well, that makes me want to say stop drawing it, but let's not.
Yeah. Look, we'll get through all this. I know, like we'll get. I mean, the other side of this is that I think our stories are always filled with ultimately with hope and love, and people are motivated by the things that motivate us all. And this story is the same way, as dark or gritty as it can get, or as violent as it can get, because it is violent. Ultimately, the characters come from a place of caring, and that's what this story is. It's about what are the lengths you go to protect your family. What would you do to protect your family? And Geiger would do anything. This guy would do anything to protect his family.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of respond to something which has some kind of with some warmth to it, and that kind of is independent of the aesthetics and the visuals. You can have you can have a bleak environment, and you can have a bleak situation, and you can find you can inject that kind of thing, the warmth into that in exactly the same way as you can have a beautiful story, or and it can be kind of bleak on a human level. I'm thinking an example of this for me is always Chinatown, which is just so lush and beautiful to look at, and ultimately kind of from a human point of view, quite a bleak and an unpleasant. I've been told off for describing it as a nasty little film, but that's kind of the way that I feel about it. It looks beautiful, but it's kind of, there's a hollowness to it.
Yeah, that's something that I think is going to resonate with people about the book, is that while a lot of things that might be post-apocalyptic, and it starts with the high concept, and people may not want to be reminded of, not being able to leave the house, but you guys have started with the core of a character and a motivation and a heart that it flips it the other way around, where you're not reminded of like this wasteland. You're reminded of what it takes to kind of keep going on and to protect those that you love. And it starts with the heart of it, which I think is awesome. And it made for a really great read.
And I think that's what pulls you along. It's what pulls you in and keeps you there. You need to care about the people that you're reading about. You need to care about them, and then you need to know what happens next for that reason. You can't, if you just make something that's just pretty to look at, but it doesn't have that, there just comes a point where you can just drift out of it, I think.
Yeah, it's all about the heart. It's all about the heart for Geiger, and also there's humor in it too. Like, even though when there's wasteland, like his two-headed dog and Tariq have a lot of fun interactions, and there's some other humor like that's spread throughout the villains that we introduce, and we just touch on kind of the first few in the issue. There's also some fun stuff in the back matter, and we're introducing another character in kind of this universe, because Geiger is the start of kind of a bigger world. That's something in a style that you've never seen Gary draw or myself write on the very back cover.
I have the page right here. Can I hold it up, or does that need to stay on?
Oh yeah, you can hold it up. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just assuming this is what you were talking about.
Yeah. His name's Junkyard Joe.
Okay.
There we go.
So this is Junkyard Joe, who we kind of get introduced to in this book, but he's a character which will be returning at some point in the future.
That's terrific.
Yeah, and so we're trying to build a world that is, you know, again, the Geiger's the start of this bigger world of characters and tones and other things that we'll talk about more in the future. But Junkyard Joe is a big part of that as well. And here in the first issue, we just kind of introduced this cartoon strip, but it means much more in this world. The other thing that we love doing in Doomsday Clock was all the detail in the back matter. That stuff was so fun. We wanted to continue something like that with Geiger because there's such a huge world to explore and a lot of different characters to get glimpses of. So our first issue has some some peeks into that too.
That's a good point. Do you know right now, concurrently in Geiger, if you're in Nevada, what's going on in, say, Japan? Do you have the whole world fleshed out?
There's pieces of the world fleshed out. Whether we get to them and when we do is all that's a different
Right.
You know, like I think we've talked a lot about where this story in this world goes, and there'll be more revealed in kind of issue 2, I think, of what this is a part of, what Geiger's a part of. This is Geiger's first appearance and the first start of something a little bit bigger that I don't think we want to spoil or get into just too much. You know, Gary and I, we love DC, we love Marvel. We wanted to introduce something new that you only have to pick up Geiger #1 and read it, and you get on the ground floor of something different and hopefully emotional and exciting and absolutely beautiful. We put everything we have into it, so everyone who's going to give this a shot, we really appreciate it. This is a big passion project for us, and it's something that we're hoping to explore for quite a while.
Cool.
Nothing to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, it really feels like the level of craft you guys have brought to everything you've done is all here, but there's that extra creator-owned element of it where you can really tell that there's a lot of love in it and a lot of purpose, and it was a great read. So,
thanks, Alex. We hope other people feel the same. We're really excited about it.
I'm excited about getting it out into the world too. I think people are going to love it.
Cool.
Cool. So I'm going to wrap this up. Say thank you to everyone that joined. And
Thank you.
Happy WonderCon.